cars that you can think of
They're
that
under.
you think we could, if I gave you 20 grand today,
So 20
you
grand.
could walk out of the house with 20 grand. You could go get this car today and you would be like, this is going to be a future classic. I just know it.
What's going on, two car guys? I'm John. This is Adam, and we're going to talk about future classics.
Future classics. One of my favorite topics ever.
Oh man, it's a very controversial topic.
It is,
to say the least, because everybody has a different opinion on this.
It is.
And I think we're going to disagree on this episode a little bit.
We are. So welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to the episode. Welcome back to Two Car Guys. And let's talk about it, John. Let's get into it. So just to kind of set the stage, John and I were talking, and I said to him, I was like, man, I just got done watching this episode of Top Gear from like the 90s.
Yeah.
Or early 2000s. And they did an episode about future classics. And it was pretty cool because they were talking about cars as an investment and if there's any value in some of these cars, you know, and as a general rule of thumb, cars are not really a good investment for the most part.
Don't listen to us for investment advice. That's all we're saying.
Please don't. Unless you get something that's kind of on the rare end. And so it got me thinking, what do we think are future classics? Like, what do we think are cars that are going to be future classics? And so there might be a few in here that I think are going to throw some people. There might be a few in here that hopefully you agree with, right?
Yeah. And I'm sure some people can guess some of our favorite cars and pretty much figure it out. But
you know what?
Let's go.
I'm kind of betting no one's going to guess what I'm going to say here, which is really crazy. But we're gonna break it up into two different groups, right?
Okay.
One of the groups is if you had the money to purchase it like 4 or 5 years ago, right? When the market was low.
Yeah.
And then the other group is what could you buy today? What could you get your hands on today?
Ooh.
And maybe sit on it for a little bit, right? And be able to make some money on it.
We're saying long term growth on this, or are we saying like short pop? Maybe we'll make some money.
Well, let's say long term, right? Because the short pop, who knows, right? Who knows what the market's going to do? I mean, if you guys have been watching the series for a while, one of our other episodes was the car market seems to be softening. So I think now might be a good time to buy it. Just hang out on it for a little while, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's start, 4 or 5 years ago, softer market, right? We've got some cars out there. If you could buy a couple cars, where would you even start, right? What would you think is a future classic? And let me give you kind of some examples, right? If I could have bought a Ford GT in 2019, for like $150,000. Right now, we're talking second gen Ford GT. We're talking about the one 2006 when they brought it back.
100 years of Ford.
Yep. And it had the supercharged motor. Right. Still had a manual transmission.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. That would be a future classic.
Absolutely.
Easy, right? Because now they're worth $400,000.
Yeah. Easily. And we're kind of looking at the track record there. The Viper ACR Extreme Aero 2019, $120,000 car. I think MSRP on those cars was like $160,000. So you could have bought a brand spanking new one and just held on to it. And those cars the market has softened a little bit, but they're still in the high twos. So not as good as a Ford GT, but good money. I mean,
well, and that's a great example, and it would be a great car, right?
Absolutely.
But John, what would you get if you couldn't be in the 6-figure range?
Right. So, man, that's tough. I would have probably went like, I'd have probably done bad. In the not 6 figures, you could have probably gotten like a classic Aston Martin DB9, which I did do. And I did okay. I broke even and I got to drive it for free. So to me, I think that's a decent enough investment, but it wasn't big money. And even if you take money out of it, if you think about the Aston Martin, one of the things that Aston Martin doesn't have going for it is Aston came out and said, we're never going to quit. We're never going to start doing hybrid. We're never going to go all electric. We're going to keep building combustion engines until somebody tells us to stop. Right. So if you think about it from that aspect,
what is the last of a car? What is a limited run of a car that we think if we got our hands on today,
Under
take
sub
it out on
six
Sundays
figures.
once a month, right? Something like
Okay.
that. And you drive it and that car be worth a fair amount down the road.
It's tough, man. Honestly, under six figures is not somewhere that I have a lot of like, oh my God, but JDM cars come to mind instantly. We just saw a like a Honda CR or the little hatchback Honda.
Yep.
Like a 90
CRX
or 91 or something CRX.
Yeah.
And it sold for well into the $100,000. And I'm
Really?
like, yes.
Okay.
Blew my mind, man. I'm like, and the JDMs are really, they pull a big, strong premium right now, but I think everybody's into that because our generation grew up in the JDMs. I mean, that's what we drove in high school and stuff. Like,
well, there's some nostalgia in that, right? There's some nostalgia in that car, but they're really reliable cars. They were super cool. And one of the cars that's on the top of my list, which I said probably no one will ever get
Let's hear it.
Acura Integra Type R.
Yeah, I think so. I
So
honestly
when
think
they
that
brought the
would've been a
Acura
solid
Integra Type R to the US, they had a white one. It said Integra R on the side of it. If you could have got one of those in 3-4 years ago, 5 years ago, if you could have gotten one of those with low miles and good condition,
just no rust, none of that.
no rust, right?
Yeah, solid.
That would be a car that I honestly feel like we could have. That's a future classic.
Absolutely.
It is. They're hard to find. There's none available. I checked before we even did this episode. I checked online. There's none available for sale. Right.
Also, NSX, that year model.
The
original NSX. The original
the
NSX.
second or the one that's out now.
The original NSX, the very
so you're talking
first
pop-up headlights.
generation pop-up. Well, actually, the 2002 Honda NSX in that blue that my wife loves. That's a car she really wants, and I'm gonna be honest. Like, it's hard for me to get on the NSX train, because I think that it's hype, but it's not, man. They are bringing money right now, dude.
No, and you know what? It's a great car.
Yeah.
And when I was in high school, one of my friend's parents worked for Acura Honda.
Yeah.
And he brought home a bright yellow NSX. And I remember thinking that was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
And it was like it almost looked like a spaceship back then.
Absolutely.
Right? Because that was as close as I could come to like a Lamborghini or a Ferrari at that time in my life.
Oh, yeah.
And I've always been a big NSX fan. I actually prefer the flip-up headlights over the bubble headlights that they went to.
I always thought the bubble was classy looking. I always thought that
it
gave
is
a little bit more charm.
But the flip-up was the one that I fell in love with.
OG, yeah.
Yeah, it's the OG.
It's the OG. But, I mean, yeah, it's weird to see these cars at the prices that we're seeing them at.
Yeah.
7 years later, 10 years later,
To be fair, there are people out there right now that are buying sealed copies of Super Mario Brothers. Because it's about nostalgia, right?
Yeah.
It's about having an opportunity to connect with that part of your life. And these are very well built cars. They're hard to come by. They're a really, really fun car to drive because it's like driving a go-kart, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've ridden in one. I've never driven one. I have ridden in a few, one specific car that my buddy Tyler, he worked at a place called PTAP, and it was Perfect Touch Automotive Playground. And they did all kinds of crazy stuff in the 2000s, like JDM stuff back then when it was big. And they had an NSX. It was the first Viper I ever rode in, all that stuff. So really cool ideas. Just looking back.
I mean, on the JDM topic.
Yeah.
Acura Integra Type R would be up at the top of my list.
Yeah, I know where one is right now.
The NSX would be up at the top of my list. The Supra, that's a car that we have rose-colored glasses for.
Right.
Because in high school, I thought that car was amazingly cool.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an awesome car. And you got that 2JZ motor in it.
Right.
Very cool.
I mean, I'd even go for
it wasn't as fast as we think it is.
Not stock. No,
not stock. But that's the thing about that car is you could go crazy with it on the aftermarket.
Yeah.
But stock, it was not as fast as you remember it being.
Right. And one of the other things you can also look at is like the Eclipse, the GSXT, and the what we talked about the other day, the Plymouth Laser, and like the odd brands of that, I think are
the Eagle Talon.
The Eagle Talon. Yeah, I mean, all of those would be awesome, fun dailies or fun collectors to have if you could get a mint version of it. And finding a mint version is the hard part of those cars.
Very hard.
And you will spend a fortune to bring it to where it needs to be now because none of the parts are available. It's just tough.
Yeah, and I mean, in that future classic stuff, right? We talked a lot. In fact, I've got some people who just commented today on one of our videos. I still like the Ford Lightning, early 2000s red
like
step-side bed,
get
supercharged,
the racer's edge on the side of it. Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah, I've always liked that. I think that would be a good future classic car, especially because the reissue of the Ford Lightning is all electric.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah. So it's never going to be what it was.
So
and that's kind of
where I want to take you next.
Okay,
is it's never going to be where it was, right? So with that in mind, think about this. What cars are going away right now? What cars are we losing?
Right.
That you honestly believe would be a future classic?
So we're not looking at price range and we're talking right now. Like what I
right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
600 LT, 100%.
Okay.
675 LT, and these are McLarens. Those are two on the top of my list. They've been on the top of my list for like a few years now. I would think because
so they're both limited run, right?
Yeah,
so they're both limited in the amount of vehicles they built.
Yeah.
And I would say that they're probably peak performance for those vehicles that they built too.
Absolutely. I would say one outlier would be like the Maserati Gran Turismo MC. So
yes,
I think that because the Gran Turismo's gone to this, the hybrid V6 stuff, and it's not what it used to be.
Right.
They're known for that sound, and I think that at any point you can look and say that's a beautiful car, and I think that car in the future, and it's greatly priced now. I mean, they're down in you can get one almost in the $30,000 mark, man. That was a $200 and something thousand car new.
Yeah,
like come on, let's go.
That would be a pretty cool car.
Yes.
I will say the last V12 Vantage before the redesign.
Yep.
Would probably be a really cool like future classic.
Right. Obviously, I lean to the V12 Astons, and I would say the DBS for sure. Future classic, absolutely.
Yes.
Especially with the V12, unless they come out with another DBS V12, and then that kind of would kill it. But the DB12, which I was like, for sure is going to be a V12. It never was, and so that was wild to me.
And it might be right when they reissue the DBS, which I'm sure is coming with everything they've got going on. I don't know if you just saw Aston just released the Aston Martin new Vantage in the convertible.
And of course, we're playing in a field of like the $200,000 range, I would say, because you can get astronomically crazy on collectible cars like that.
Right. Let me ask you a question. Okay.
Okay.
And this is going to be super controversial, and I can already see people in the comments right now going, "What are you talking about?" Right.
All right.
But do you think that the Dodge Challenger Demon is going to be a future classic?
I saw something before this episode. I was watching, and Mecum, I believe, or one of the big auction houses, has got like 8 of them right now, where people are just trying to offload these bad boys. Man, I don't think so. I really don't. I mean,
the reason why I say that, right, is because they got rid of the Challenger altogether. Now they just have the Charger. They got a 2-door and a 4-door, and it's
coming back,
electric or V6.
But it's coming back with a V8.
It might come back with a V8. I think they'd be crazy. So,
I can tell you their engineers right now are doing their best to cut as big a hole in the middle of that thing to put a Hemi in there and throw the freaking supercharger on it. And call it
Tim,
done.
If you're listening to this, now that you're back with Stellantis, throw the biggest Hemi.
Hey man,
supercharged.
I'm glad he did what he did. He left when all the craziness where he was in that weird AI thing, I would have left too. I would have been gone, man. He left and he was like, all right, I'll come back under Ram. And now he's already said the Hemi's coming back. So
Yeah.
you know that's the kind of leadership that they need. And I think that that's the future. I don't. And if a great example of that would be the SRTA Challengers, right? Before the Hellcats and all that stuff, everybody thought that's a good investment. That's going to be a great car. Buy that thing for $12,000 right now.
Yeah, but that was different, right? Because the SRT8 Challengers
manual,
they went
V8.
crazy, right? And I'm pretty sure if you look it up online, I think Dodge at one time put a Hellcat in a minivan or something. I don't even
right. Yeah, I mean
they were
stuffing them in everything.
They were putting Hellcats in anything that would fit them. They were
putting
Hemis in anything.
You know what I mean?
Well, that's what I'm saying. They're putting Hemis in everything.
Yeah.
But the reason why I ask if you think that the Challenger Demon would be a future classic is because right now, as far as we know, that platform is gone.
Possibly. I mean,
it's gone.
Okay, I see where you're going.
So here's a good example.
In 15 years, I'm eating these words really bad.
Yeah, exactly, right? What about the last generation Camaro and
basically the big
Firebird?
Three. Yeah, the big three. The last generation Camaro.
Not the last generation Camaro, the one that was just out,
it's crazy. That's a good car.
It's a phenomenal car.
Phenomenal car, man. It's tough because I love those. I love that thought process. I don't know, man. Maybe last generation Corvettes, like the C7 ZR1. I think that car's future classic.
The C7 ZR1, I think it could be a future classic
because it's the last of the front engine, last of the manual versions of that. I mean, I could see that making a really good, even the Z06. Last generation, last manual. Unless they slap a manual in this rear engine car, which I don't see them doing.
I don't see them doing that either because the dual clutch is so much faster.
Yeah, the platform, what it is. Even, I mean, obviously you're not going to like this, but even the new ZR1 that's coming for the C8.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to be a future classic.
I maybe not.
No, because they're going to build a bajillion of them.
I know. I just want it to be.
We're going to go to Cafe and Octane. There'll be 9,000 of them on the same row. So
maybe not rare. Okay, it's not going to be rare, but the NSX not rare.
No, but it is. So it is, and I think in order to be a future classic, you have to be rare.
Okay.
And you have to be, almost like an iconic piece of brand.
Yeah.
Right. So the NSX is definitely rare. If you look at the ones that are out there, the ones that are out there are few and far between, especially in mint condition.
Okay.
Right.
All right.
But a great example of that would be like the Firebird. Do you remember the Firebird when they did the one with the double snorkel on the top, the big Ram Air? The Trans Am.
Right.
Now that could be a future classic.
Absolutely.
Because that was the last Pontiac muscle car that came out before they did away with Pontiac.
So the plastic fantastic car, really. I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong, it's cool. But yeah, I see that. And that's the other thing. What's crazy is the timeline of how cars fade out, because I mean, I don't know a lot of people our age that are screaming after classic cars. I know a few and they have some really cool classic cars, but
so
they're not.
And I mentioned this on one of the previous episodes, but I've gone to Barrett Jackson quite a few times.
Right.
And what was funny was the first few times I went there, the classic cars were selling for high dollars, right?
Yeah.
The last time I went, now I didn't go last year or the year before.
They're gonna tear me up in the comments for this. I already know it.
But
that's cool though.
2 years ago, I went and the stuff that was like Mustang on the Shelby registry, was selling for 180 grand or something like that.
Yeah,
then they had the Shelby that was a reproduction that was like an Eleanor tribute, and it was selling for $350,000. So the message there is the custom stuff was selling for more than the
true Super
Snake
stuff and stuff like that. Yeah. But you just don't know because like a friend of mine, he had a Ford GT and he had a GT 500 that
Yeah.
he sent to Shelby. It had 8 miles on it. Shelby, it was a Super Snake package, all that stuff. He got the car back, and he thought that he's like, look, the GT's cool, but I think the Super Snake's going to be worth more in the future. And he's a classic car guy, so he sold the GT. Yeah, sold the GT and the Super Snake he still had. And I think at that time, and this has been a few years. This is before COVID and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Been a few years now. That car at that time was only worth like 90 grand. And
But I
he's
mean,
like,
those
you
cars
know, he
creeped
didn't-
up
he
out of
didn't know
nowhere.
it.
I don't think anyone knew that. And I think I mentioned I had an opportunity to buy a white with blue stripe Ford GT
Yeah.
for like 150 grand.
Right. Well, I mean, same thing. I had the opportunity with the Dodge Viper ACR Extreme Aero.
Yeah.
And knew the values were going up. I was like, this car is going to be worth a crazy amount of money in the future. And I was like, I just couldn't risk it, man. I was like, it's too
Yeah.
much money. And that would have been an amazing investment. But
So what
then
about
the
all these
question comes
people?
to, would I have driven it? Right.
What about all these people that ran out and bought the last R8?
I don't know, man. Do
Do you think that the
new
R8 is
GT
going to be a future classic?
I'd like to think yes, depending on what they do next.
See, I don't
Because
think
that's
so.
the question. Well, I do agree that the GT, the one they just came out with and all that, I don't see it being astronomically crazy. I don't see it losing a lot of money though.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see it being a bad investment looking at the R8 V8. That car is still worth 80 grand and it's significantly less of a car than the V10 cars. And I would
Right.
100% say the last generation is a great investment car, a great entry level supercar.
It's a great entry level supercar. It's
yeah.
a great daily supercar.
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
very comfortable. You could drive that thing every day. It's very
Yeah.
nice. A friend of mine had one.
Yeah.
But to get rid of it for the same reason that I would get rid of it is
It's not a Lambo.
well, it's just not. It doesn't have that
So-
raw
Okay.
excitement that you get in a Huracan.
Speaking of which, what do you think about the Huracan? Do you think that's an investment car? Not
No.
any kind of special version of it.
No,
like
not
the
at all.
First generation.
Not at
Okay.
all.
What about like the STO?
But you know why I don't think that car is an investment car? Is because they built a bajillion of them.
Right.
And everybody had one. I mean, in fact, right
didn't-
now on
I would
Auto
have one
Tempest,
today. I would love
you
to
know, not sponsored by the way, but right now on Auto Tempest,
Maybe one day.
maybe one day, they have. There's a dealership that has. What is it? One of the big YouTubers cars, right? And I'm
Right.
like, okay, well, great. It's a base model red,
Yeah.
you know, quote unquote most famous Huracan online. I mean, I like the Huracan. I wouldn't mind picking one up.
Yeah.
I want a Huracan Perf, right? I don't want
Of course.
an Evo.
No. And that's where I think it gets specialized. If you're talking about the base R8 or the base Huracan or any of that, I don't think it gets into that investment level. But you talk about a Performante, they didn't make a lot of them. The STO,
No, but
they
I
didn't
still
make a
don't
lot of
see
them.
I still don't see the Perf or the STO being a future classic because
I don't know, man. I would own a
the-
Perf right now and hope that
the
it.
STOs are already
like
coming
that.
down in value, right?
Well, yeah, but everything kind of hits a bottom, and then you don't see it until okay. So we're in Lamborghinis.
But I mean,
Just
you're talking
keep
about the last of the last, right?
Okay.
So
We're in
so
Lamborghini.
I think that, you know, maybe the Huracan,
Okay.
right? Maybe the Technica,
Okay.
right?
And we're talking about entry level Lambos because like Gallardo's Superleggeras still haven't peaked. I think they've been 150 for like a long time.
Yeah, they're
You
just
know what
kind
I
of
mean? Like it's just
you know,
been
doing
like
that.
150. 150. It's right there where you're like, ooh, come on to me. But one of the other cars, I would say, what do you think about like a Murcielago or a Aventador?
Okay. I think an Aventador is a future classic.
Right.
Right.
It's the last of the before the hybrid stuff.
I
that's
think it's a
great
future classic.
classic.
It's you can argue with me all you want. It's the best sounding supercar on the market. I mean,
Yes.
when you go to a car show and
Absolutely.
you hear one of them rev up, you know exactly what it is without looking at it. If you hear one go by on the highway, you know exactly what it is without looking at it.
And the
It's just
fanfare that
such a-
they bring, man, like they're always going to be up there. You know what I mean? Like I think they'll always be up there.
I mean, here's the thing: is that was the last car that they built that still had the scissor doors.
Yes.
And then they started bringing out the
It's
regular
kinda
doors.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they had them on the Gallardo and they had them on the Huracan. And I'm sorry, don't. Please hear me when I say this. I still love the Huracan. I would like to own one.
He wants the billionaire doors.
I'd be interested in trading the McLaren for a Huracan.
So you would give up a car that we just called a future classic for a not future classic.
But it's because of the experience, you know. But
Oh, is
yes, I might.
Oh,
However,
okay.
I feel like the fact that Lamborghini didn't put their signature doors on those cars took away from the specialness of those cars.
I agree with that. But at the same time, like, oh man, I would own a Perf right now. A Performante would be in my driveway if I could afford it right now.
Yeah, but if I had the choice, I'd have a Lamborghini Aventador.
Yeah, of course. And that's the thing. At that price point, they're the same.
Yeah.
You can buy a 2013, 2014 Lamborghini for $220,000. You can do the same thing with a Huracan. And that's the hardest part, is trying to pick where you're putting
no hard
that
part
money.
about it. You're talking about a V12.
Right, but then when you talk about the maintenance, you talk about the ownership, you talk about all that. We have talked about this a lot, because how many times have I been like, I'm selling 3 cars, I'm going to get a Lamborghini tomorrow.
All the time.
And you're like,
I get that text message at least once a week at 1 a.m.
Yes.
And it's like, I need an Aventador in my life. I'm like, yes, you do.
I need it in my life. If this channel ever takes off, y'all are coming with me on a trip, because I'm going to get a Lambo.
Hey, if this channel takes off, Lambos for everybody.
Let's go. You get a Lambo. You get a Lambo. Right. You get a Lambo.
No, I mean, it's just, honestly, it's kind of interesting to me because when I think about Ferraris are harder to get new, especially, but they're harder to get, and it's more exclusive. And if you look at like the 458, the 458 is guaranteed to be a future classic. It's the last flat plane crank V8. It's the last naturally aspirated engine.
Absolutely.
It's the last of the last of the last.
Oh,
of the last,
it's
right?
such a good car too.
Scuderia.
Yes.
430.
The Scuds, man. Oh, so, there's a dealership, Normal Guys Supercars. I watch them on YouTube and everything, and great guys. They had both a Superleggera and a Scuderia at the same time. And they went through the comparisons of the two. And I'm telling you, man, like the Scud is, and I've driven the Scud.
I was about to say, but you said that car has to be wrung out all the time to enjoy it.
To enjoy that car, you do not want to be in traffic. That is not a traffic car. That is a car where you are 100% in it, and each gear pull, you are just like, yes. But and that's something to be sought after. I mean, if that's what you do with the car, if you go out and you go A to A, right? You're going out, you're going to take this car, and you're going to leave your house, and you're coming back to your house. That's the perfect car for you. And I mean,
when I think about it, I would love to have a Scuderia.
Absolutely.
Right? I think it would just be a great car to have in the collection because it's so classic. It's such a cool car.
Yes.
But, we're sitting here talking about 6-figure cars.
Yes.
I mean, is there any last-minute cars that you can think of
that
you think we could, if I gave you 20 grand today?
So 20 grand.
You could walk out of the house with 20 grand. You could go get this car today, and you would be like, this is going to be a future classic. I just know it.
It's going to be, oh man, $20,000. That's not a hot budget, man.
It's not.
There's not a lot of cars you can buy right now, period, for 20 grand. But
no, you're looking at something that was back from the early 2000s, late
90s. I'd probably buy like a Gen 1 Viper, or you know what I mean, like the hated Viper that's in like bad shape, and just fix it up and make it nice. I think that's where I'd be.
Yeah,
that's where I'd be. And it may never ever pop. The Gen 1 wasn't popular.
I drove. You know better than I do. I drove a Viper recently, and it was not kind to me. So
honestly, but you're coming from like a 600 LT.
I actually drove the 600 LT up there to drive this car, and
if I got out of a 600 LT and got in a Viper, I would not be impressed by the way it drives. I'm just being honest. But if you start out your day in the Viper, you're gonna love it.
Well, I mean, like, when I had my foot all the way on the floor with the clutch, and then I had it all the way to my chest to let it out, you know, when it was grabbing, like,
sir, welcome to Viper ownership.
I was like, oh,
No.
oh, this thing's gonna travel for days. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's some cars out there that I think would be interesting, and there's a future classic that I just thought of that would be probably under 20 grand, maybe.
Go ahead. What is it? Hit us with it.
It's another JDM car.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't play in the JDM sector. It's not
the Honda S2000.
Yeah, the S2000 is probably a great car, and it's over 20 probably. I actually sold one a while back.
It probably is over 20. I will tell you, there's a dealership that not a dealership, it's a repair place that I drive by every once in a while, and they have a Honda S2000 shaped car cover out in the front. So I'm pretty sure there's a Honda S2000 in that.
Maybe just tucked underneath that cover. Absolutely.
Maybe just tucked underneath that cover.
In our conversation, I went ahead and Googled and let AI make the decision of what they thought a supercar future classic was. And they listed the Porsche 911, the Jaguar F-Type, the Ferrari 458 Italia.
What Porsche 911?
Hold on. It doesn't tell me, obviously. This is AI's answer. And it listed the McLaren Artura, which I don't think is a good investment car at all. I don't think that's a future classic. The Artura. It's the first of their like hybrid stuff, but
I don't think it's a good investment car. I don't think it's a good future classic car. I think the 600 LT. I think the 675 is the money car.
Yeah, absolutely. 675, 100%. Even I would say 720 because they're or even the 750. The 750 doesn't have hybrid, right?
No, 750 doesn't have hybrid. It's actually got a little bit of a refreshed interior.
Yeah, maybe the 750, but even then, I would want the LT cars. I think the LT cars are a better investment.
I think 675 LT is going to be a future classic.
765 LT, 675 LT, 600 LT. Those are going to be your future classics of McLaren, I think.
Hey, you know what? You said it. The Jaguar F-Type.
I don't think
that might be a future classic because the way Jag is going.
If you want a
they
Jaguar,
might not ever be around.
Actual Jaguar, then that's probably what you'll buy. There are some cool ones though. They had like they had some V8 ones that were pretty powerful.
They did, and actually, there's two cars out there that probably not a lot of people know about.
Yeah,
but the Project 8.
Yeah,
was one of my favorite cars of all time.
Yeah.
And it's something that not a lot of people talk about. If you're a fan of Grand Tour, they actually did a review on it on Grand Tour.
It's a cool car.
But you're talking about a 600 horsepower supercharged V8, limited to 300 cars worldwide. Right. That car is so cool.
Yes.
And it does not get it
doesn't get the love that it should.
No.
And maybe that's how that becomes that. One of the other cars, the Aston Martin Rapide AMR, I think, as a four-door car, I saw one the other day. So they don't pop on the market much. And
I've seen a handful of them, but I'll tell you, the Rapide, I've never seen one in good condition. Well, every one I've ever seen has been rode hard.
The Rapide AMR, though,
I've seen the Rapide AMR. They're all rough.
Well, I would want to find one that's obviously in collector grade, like the DB11 is. But to have that lineup, I think, would be super cool. To have the Rapide AMR next to the DB11 AMR, and then to get the Vantage with the manual AMR.
I'll tell you, there's a Rapide AMR in Davie, Florida.
How much they want for it?
Let's go get it.
How much they want for it?
179 grand.
Right. So those were in the 130s like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yep.
Another couple cars I didn't think about, like the BMW M3. Like I'm guessing classic M3s, like the E90s, the E46s. Those I see at work. You'll have like a full dining packaged car, and people call us about them all the time, and that's a solid investment car. I think those can do really well. Land Rover Defender, like the classic Defenders.
I'll tell you right now, the classic Defenders are getting frame over rebuilds, frame off rebuilds, right?
Yes.
And those are cars that are getting a heck of a treatment, and the new ones are in the twos.
Yes.
For gosh sakes.
Oh, yeah.
They're crazy right now.
It's unreal. The Lexus LFA obviously is on the list, and then the Mercedes AMG GT, which It's an awesome car. Buddy of
It
mine's
is an
actually
awesome car,
selling
and right
his.
now they are selling for stupid money.
Yeah,
I mean, those cars were 150 grand plus new, and now you can get one for
70.
60 grand.
60, 70 grand to get a good car.
Yeah.
The one I drove that my buddy has, he actually is selling that car to buy a Lamborghini. He's always wanted a LP car, so he found him one, and now he's trying to sell the car. And it's a clean car, man, and it's the perfect spec, like blue to tan, the brown interior. It's nice.
Two questions.
Yes, sir.
One, is that going to end up in your driveway?
No,
Two, is that the one you lost the race in?
possibly.
So you should probably think about getting a BMW instead.
Hey, look, man, that was all driver error, not the car. The car is cool. But yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you guys enjoyed this episode and ones like it, let us know in the comments. Come back for more content. Make sure you're liking and subscribing our videos, and make sure you guys are leaving us some notes to tell us what what you'd like to see in the future. But with that,
I think that wraps it up, man.
it wraps it up.
Absolutely. Hit us on the next one, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Peace.